Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are pushing through almost to the midterm, and we're with Chapter 6, the Enlightenment and Revolution. So when somebody becomes enlightened, what does that mean, Mr.
They
Loebner?
see the light. They are smarter now. They've gained knowledge.
Exactly. Think about the little light bulb going off, bringing that knowledge. And we were thinking before, talking about religion and the Middle Ages, and then we had the Renaissance, and now these thinkers and explorers and scientists are all going to bring new knowledge to Europe and the rest of the world.
And enlightenment will lead to revolution in some countries where they want to overthrow these absolute monarchs we have been talking about.
Yes. Using your brain, realizing that what they're doing just isn't right.
That's right. So we have Isaac Newton,
Oh, nice hair.
middle name Fig, Galileo Galilei,
Another good beard. That's a beard.
rivals your husband's,
Yes, it does.
John
Mustache one
Locke,
day.
and Nicholas Copernicus. We'll talk about them. All right, so the Enlightenment, there's 4 sections in this chapter. Scientific Revolution, Section 1. The Enlightenment itself. Section 3 is the Enlightenment in government, and Section 4 is the American Revolution.
One if by land, two if by sea.
Here we see centers of enlightenment. So we have London and Paris
Yeah.
and Berlin and over in the United States.
I was just gonna say this
future
little-
United States,
yeah.
Boston and Philadelphia. So the Enlightenment was across Europe as well as in the American colonies.
So a few things. Renaissance, 1300 to 1600. This is when we were talking about art and learning, inspiring this curiosity. We talked about the Renaissance man and humanists and how we didn't just want to focus our study on religion. And seeing here before 1500, referring back to the Bible, ancient Greece and Rome. And now those topics were important. The Greeks and Romans did a lot and were sort of the jumping off point or the basis for some of the knowledge that we have. But the Renaissance really pushed people to think beyond just what they saw and really challenge their thinking and go beyond the visual.
Well said.
Oh, I thank you.
In the Middle Ages, it was believed that the Earth was the center of the universe.
And flat maybe.
That's right.
Oh, a little bit.
The moon, the sun, the planets all went in a perfect circle around the Earth, so that is the geocentric theory, Earth-centered view of the universe. Aristotle believed in that. It was expanded by Ptolemy, and Christianity taught that since God put people on Earth, Earth therefore is the center of the universe.
Would make sense. Why would he put Earth, out there somewhere if,
Yes.
he created it?
But then with the scientific revolution, people are going to make careful observations, and they're going to start questioning these accepted beliefs. So now we have the heliocentric theory. The sun is the center of the universe. And the church didn't like that.
No, they did not. I always think it was the Loebner-centric theory, Mr. Loebner being the center of the universe, but that's just me. I don't know.
Nice.
Yeah. So remember, what we said before is up until this point, the church had said, no, the earth is the center. So when somebody comes up with this new idea, it's very revolutionary. And what happens when you go against the church's teachings, Mr. Loebner?
They get you.
They get you.
The Inquisition.
Remember we talked about the Inquisition, torture, and Copernicus comes up with this theory. Then we have Johann Kepler is going to use math to prove that Copernicus' theory about geocentricity is correct, which leads us to somebody that most of you may know,
Galileo.
And he's going to build his own telescope. I think it was, 16, I can't remember, '09 maybe, he builds his own telescope. And he now has visual proof that the sun is the center of the universe, which sends the Catholic Church into a tizzy.
I always thought it was Uranus.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry guys, not Uranus. That's going to come way, way later, so we think. It's probably not even a planet anymore, right?
Yeah,
Pluto's not a planet, who knows? Ugh, people changing their minds all the time. So the Catholic Church said to Galileo, if you defend Copernicus, there's going to be repercussions. And unfortunately, he couldn't do that. He had to go with what he knew, so.
So he gets summoned to Rome by the Pope. He has a trial before the Inquisition, and Galileo was a little scared. He signed a confession under the threat of torture, stating that Copernicus's ideas were false. So Galileo is going to live the rest of his life under house arrest.
Can you imagine somebody forcing you, saying, here, do this, or else, and he didn't want to put up with that?
When I was a teenager, I was on house arrest.
Were you?
It was not easy. Trust.
Ankle bracelet? Yeah.
Both
They didn't have
ankles.
those back then, both ankles. So most of you in science probably learning about the scientific method, and one of the important, I guess, ideas to come out of this time was this logical procedure for gathering information. So you see something, you come up with this idea, and you then form an experiment to try to prove your hypothesis, whether you are right or wrong. Francis Bacon,
Bacon.
yeah, I'm so hungry right now, helped to develop this idea of the scientific method, coming up with the experiment before you, just draw your own conclusions. And then Isaac Fig Newton, gravity. Everyone knows about gravity. What comes up?
Must come down.
Yeah. Anything else?
That's it for
All
section
right.
1. We're going to move on to section 2 in 1 second. Okay, so now we're on to
Back.
section 2, and the Enlightenment, as we mentioned before, it's an intellectual movement that stresses reason and thought and the power of individuals to solve problems. And there were a lot of problems, especially with the absolute monarchs. And
Exactly.
they really started questioning, why does one person have all the power and everybody else has nothing?
Exactly. And it just didn't seem fair.
So there's a couple views on government, one from Thomas Hobbes, who believed people are selfish and wicked, so they should hand their rights over to a strong ruler, and in exchange they get law and order. That's a social contract.
So yeah, we don't actually sign this contract, but being here, you sort of make this like unwritten promise that, in order to protect us, that maybe sometimes we're going to have to, come down strong, whoever's in charge.
But then John Locke, who is a huge inspiration for the American Revolution, he believes in the idea of self-government. All people are born free and equal. Thomas Jefferson will write, everybody's entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But it was Locke who 100 years earlier said everybody's entitled to life, liberty, and property.
So those are your 3 natural rights: life, liberty, and property. That being a citizen, that you are entitled to these 3 things. And as a citizen, you also have the right to overthrow that government or that absolute monarch if they cross the line, if they push it to a point that is unacceptable. And as Mr. Loebner just mentioned, these ideas are the foundation for modern democracy, our Constitution, the Bill of Rights.
So these men and women of the Enlightenment, these philosophers, also known as philosophs, and they believe in progress for society and using reason to fix the problems of their time period.
So just using logic, using your brain, what makes sense, and then how can we use that to fix some of the problems that we have.
So we have Voltaire,
My
a
favorite
French
quote
philosopher.
in America or in world history here.
Tell us about
Oh,
it.
I'm sorry. Voltaire, this French philosopher, writer, attacking the church, government, the rich. Freedom of speech is something that he fought for. And that quote that's there: "I do not agree with a word you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it." So we talk about this even in class all the time. You may not always agree with your friend or the teacher or whoever it is, but respecting their right to say these things. And it doesn't mean you're going to, not like them the next day. It's just that you're entitled to your opinion. And he may not have agreed with you, but he really believed in your right to have this free speech.
Okay, very good.
Yes.
And we have Montesquieu, who has inspired our American government with the separation of powers. Instead of one branch with all the power, there's 3 branches that share the power and can put checks on the power. So checks and balance is something you'll learn a lot about in civics in a couple of years.
Junior year.
And we have Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who believed the only good government is freely formed by the people. So the idea of direct democracy, the people have the right to run their own country. And he's going to inspire a revolution in his own home country of France.
Exactly. And we'll talk about that in Chapter 7, the French Revolution. And, key point, Rousseau, Locke, Voltaire, these are going to be 3 of the men who really inspired the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, and sort of the forming of America.
All right, that concludes section 2. We'll do section 4 next. Okay, here we see a map of North America after the French and Indian War, in which the French lost significant territory to the British. So this is now all in control of England. This is about a dozen years before the American Revolution. So we could see how this is all England.
You see the colonies.
Previously, it was just this strip of land. War is expensive, and how will England want to help pay for the war?
Oh, I'm guessing taxes.
They're going to have
How else are they going to
taxes.
get the money from the people?
Colonists are going to cry no taxation without representation, and they are going to fight back against these these acts.
Yes.
So the Stamp Act was the first one that was passed, and every time the British passed an act and the Americans protested, the British repealed it, but then they would just keep bringing on new
bringing
ones.
it back. Yep. Boston Massacre, Boston Tea Party was not the Tea Party that you're probably thinking of.
British actually lost $1 million worth of tea. You can understand why they were upset.
Yeah, exactly.
Boston Massacre was instigated by the Americans.
Yeah.
The Americans were ready to be free. So the war broke out in 1775. First shots heard around the world, Lexington and Concord.
Yep.
And it's going to be a long war that goes on until 1783.
So we said the influence of the Enlightenment, so those gentlemen who were talking about democracy and people having, rights to life, liberty, and property, the leaders in the colonies are going to use these ideas to justify fighting for their independence. And, Thomas Jefferson and some of these other people who were writing based on Locke come up with this idea that you are over there across the pond, and how can you be making decisions for us here in the colonies and declaring their independence? Thank you, Thomas.
So Americans had success. We're not going to get into it right now because
Yeah.
we're running over, but the Americans won the war.
Woohoo!
The first form of government, the Articles of Confederation, not enough power for the central government. Didn't work. The country's going to scrap it and write a new constitution, which we have today with the
Yes.
3 branches of government. So
Checks and balances.
these are all inspired by the Enlightenment. And eventually a Bill of Rights will be added to the Constitution. So again, Bill of Rights was influenced by Voltaire, Locke, and Rousseau, and now there is a truly democratic country,
Yes.
first time since the Roman Empire.
A good compromise between those two groups who wanted strong central government but also wanted to protect the rights of the people.
All right, so that is our take on the Enlightenment.
Hope you guys enjoyed. Hopefully a little light bulb went off.
All right, last video of the year.
Woo!